Hello guys, welcome to Code Heaven. So in this tutorial, we are going to make the crowdfunding application. We'll be continue making the crowdfunding application. If you haven't watched my previous videos, please uh, go to the playlist and watch my previous videos. This is the third part of this tutorial. So in last tutorial, we made different endpoints like last time, it looks like we made the campaign endpoint. Apart from campaign, we'll also need to make other endpoints, such as this comment donation endpoints as well. We also need to make endpoint for users. So today we'll be making an endpoint for the user. So let's continue working on that. Let's first run this application and see what we have done till last time. So till last time, it looks like we made the campaign endpoint. If we try to execute, we'll probably, okay, let's continue this one. We'll probably get null because we haven't created anything. I think in the last time while we tried to create a new campaign, we got an error related to user since the campaign needs to have user. So we'll need to create a user first. That's why let's create a user first. So to create the user, let's make a user endpoint. So let's right click this endpoint and create a new folder, and let's name this as user endpoint. You know what, this is already an endpoint folder, we don't need this folder. Let's delete this one. We just need a new class. The class name would be user endpoint. Okay, now that's done. Okay, we don't want this to be camel case. Instead, it will be Pascal case. So it's user and points. Since our previous was plural, let's make it this plural as well. Okay, that's done. And inside user endpoint, uh, since we are extending our endpoints from the base endpoint, we're going to do that here as well. So inside base endpoint, what we have is we have this default API and base URL. So we need to extend this base URL, and we also need to have this map endpoints in all of our endpoints. So that's why we'll need to override that one as well. But first, let's make the constructor CTOR and double tap, and this constructor would be built, and URL fragment base URL. I think it was base URL. Base URL would be let's see what we did in campaign endpoint. We need to do something similar. URL is equal to, let's just copy this whole part, and let's close all but this. Okay. For this says URL does not exist. Why doesn't this exist? Let's go to campaign. So public string URL. Check this part ourselves. Now what we can do is we can move this part inside base endpoint so that we can use this again and again. So, so we use this inside the base point endpoint, and now inside campaign, control K, and inside user endpoint. Now we don't need to make this local URL again and again. Okay, let's not add mapper at the moment. We will add that whenever we need it. So in the user endpoint, our so we need to change this campaign into users. So our endpoint would be something like local endpoint would be base URL is API slash p1 slash users. So API slash p1 slash users. So this is going to be our base URL, and we need to override this. Override app endpoints, and in here, if we go to campaign, we need to do something like this, similar like this. Let's copy this part, and we'll need get all endpoints save and get by ID as well. Get all to get all the users and save to instead of save. What I can do is uh, we'll just set up. So instead of that, this one, let's not create this endpoint because we won't need that at the moment. We're gonna need this get all endpoints. So let's just generate this get all, make async. Another is async task, and it will be of type I result. Let's move this HTTP context, and instead of save, we'll make a setup to create some default admin users. So let's generate this setup as well. Okay, let's remove this HTTP context, and the endpoint of setup would be a bit different. So we need to add slash set up in here, and we need to put this, since we need to put this in double quote, let's use string interpolation. Not in here, URL slash setup. So, so whenever a user um, posts to this endpoint API slash p1 slash setup slash users slash setup, then this method will be called, and let's make this async as well. So let's make get all first, and inside get all what we need is we need to create a user service. Actually, I user service, uh, we'll need to create this service first. So let's go and create the service first. So let's go to our service. Let's see what we have. So we got domain, we got repository, we have service. How did we? Let's go to. Okay, we injected repository directly. Okay, so if we go to repository, through this repository we can get all the contents of the users. So now what we're going to do is we'll make a what we can do is we can inject this user manager in here, and then we can get from this user manager user manager dot get all async user manager dot get all. When we get all, is there any method to get all? Get user ID, get email. So there is no user in this method. I think for that we'll need DB context. So we'll need to inject DB context to get all the user as well. So let's just inject this DB context. And application DB context dot users, this one dot to list. Yeah, we need to await this one, and we'll just return this all list, and we'll need to make this result dot okay. Need to wrap this inside results dot okay, so that it will send it will return with uh, 200 okay status. So this one is for to return all the users. Now we need to create the users as well. So by default we'll create a user, an admin user. Let's do that now. So to create a new user we'll need to create an application user, new app application user. where username would be admin and email would be suppose that's admin add let's say code heaven.com. Okay, say username and this is the user that we're going to create for admin user, this one. And we need some username and password as well. So for in the beginning, let's just generate password. Let's just generate a uh, let's just put a default password. Let's just say random text one hash. Okay, and we need to keep a role as well. So our role would be default will create an admin role, and we need this user manager. And you inject this part in here as well. We are doing method injection in here instead of constructor injection. We can do constructor injection as well, but in these endpoints, it's better to use this method injection so that this instance will be created only in that place where it's needed. Okay, so this one, and inside the user manager dot it should have some create a sync, and this AI of Visual Studio suggesting us to create admin user, and let's just do this. But we don't want this get awaiter and get a result. Instead of that, we'll be using await in here to make this application, to make this part asynchronous. We'll use that. Creates the so what this method does is it creates a user in Magneto with no password. So it creates without any password. But we need one with password, so I think it has some overloads with password as well. If you go inside this one, create a sync. If you go to definition, you can see what it's doing back in behind the scenes. Okay, so let's do that. Let's give the password as well. Now it's going to create username with password. Oh wait, let's store this in the result. So we are getting response of type identity result. Okay, now we're going to check if this result has succeeded. If it succeeded, if this user is created, we'll need to create a role as well. Remember this admin role, we need to create that role as well. But for that we need to bring this um, role manager as well. We need to bring this role manager. Let's get role manager as well. So inside role manager, oops, role manager. What happened? Why isn't this? So it's role manager, and inside this role manager dot create. We need to create this role called admin. So here string to application role. Oh, so looks like we need to make a new role. Okay, new application role of type name is equal to role. Okay, but before we create this one, we need to check if this role already exists, so that we don't get any like duplicates or exceptions that role is already there. So let's do that as well. If let's do some validations as well. Where role is equal to await role manager, role manager dot find by, let's find by name async, and let's check if this role already exists. Okay, and these two names are conflicting. Let's call this role name. Yeah, so role name as well. So if this role exists, so if this role is not, if this role is null, then only we'll create a new role. Okay. Okay, so now after this process we will be creating this for user and role as well. So that's pretty much it. Let's run this application and check if it works. So it looks like there is no error, but this endpoint is not showing up in Swagger. So to make this endpoint show up in Swagger, we need to add this user endpoint in these configurations. Uh, let's see. Yeah, in configure dependency. Yeah, and scope. Yeah, just like we need to add this press endpoint and campaign endpoint. Let's copy this part and add user endpoints in here as well. Oops, there is some error. Body was inferred, but method doesn't allow inferred body types. From service from attribute. Okay, looks like there's some error. Body. Maybe probably we need to add this as a body or something. Since these are dependencies, we don't need to add these as body setup. Application context, no. So this could be some map endpoint routing in case all the services configure dependency. Let's go to program.cs. It maps all the endpoints. Yeah, okay. Probably missing something in here. So what we need to do here is it's asking for us to register the dependencies of this application DB context. So what we need to do is we'll need to add this piece of code. So just go to the program.cs, yeah, and add this piece of code. Okay. So it's builder the services that add identity, application user, application role, and dot add identity entity framework stores, an application DB context, and add default token providers. Once you add this piece of code, this application DB context is registered with this identity. Our users and roles are registered, and once this is registered, we can use its dependencies in our endpoint in here, right? So okay, so once this is, so now the previous issue should go away. So it's coming now. So if we press this get users, it should come with an empty array because we haven't created any users. Now let's go to setup, and if you try to create setup, it gave us 200. Okay, so in users, uh, yep, and hopefully our service user our. Now if you go to our database and check if our users are created, so go to the database. Our database is crowdfunding. So let's open our database, and if we press this one, this should, yeah, there is, here it is, our user is created. And if you go to ASP.NET roles, our role admin is also created, and ASP.NET user roles, but we need to assign this user with this role as well. So to assign that, we'll need to put both user and role in this table. Okay, but this is not here. I think we are missing some piece of code here. We just created the role, but we haven't assigned that user to the role. So let's do that. What we can do is result is equal to await uh, user manager dot add to role async, and we need to add this user to. So and now what's the user we have here? The user is this admin user. User role. What is this asking for? Role is a string. Okay, not this whole role, but we just need this role name only. Okay, it's asking for role name only. And if you want, you can just return this result as well. Return results dot okay result. Let's not make this task because we need to send something. Our result. What we're gonna do is delete. Let's delete from ASP.NET roles. Let's just delete this and delete from ASP.NET users as well. Oops. We're gonna create these again once again. Let's restart this application, and hopefully this user and its role will be created this time. Okay, now since we have send the return type, it says success true if, and it's the errors is null. Okay, if there was an error while creating, then it will return successful, and whatever the error reason of the error, it would come in this area. Okay, now let's remove this query, and okay, our users are created once again. Let's check the roles. Admin role is there. Let's check this ASP.NET user roles. Okay, so this user is assigned to this role ID. If you check this user ID, it says it's 6C and OC. Role is OC. 6C is assigned to OC. Okay, so this 6C, this is our user, and the role is OC. Okay, so now the user that we created has become the admin user. Now, if we execute this endpoint, should show. Yeah, so it's showing us the this user list. Okay, so comments, donation campaigns, and user roles are coming as now. So to show this user role, we need to like include this user roles as well in the query. User roles. We need to join users, ASP.NET users with its roles. Then this will come campaigns and donation parts and comments parts. We haven't done that yet, so we need to do that later on. So now, if we create this campaign in campaign, okay, let's go to campaign code, campaign endpoint, campaign. Let's see if a campaign needs the user ID. Yes, it does need user ID. So when we are creating the campaign, save user ID is test. Okay. So user ID would be the user ID that's that has just logged in. Okay. And to get the user ID, we will need to authorize this endpoint as well. Let's okay. First, let's what we can do is we will need to put an attribute in here called authorize. So only logged in user can access this one. Our user is created, but the user hasn't logged in yet. So we'll need to create a login endpoint as well. We need to make a user logins and logout endpoint as well. So we're going to create that first. So only after the user has logged in, we'll get the login user's ID in here. So we'll know who has created this campaign. So before we create campaign, we'll need to make login users endpoint as well. So now for login, we'll be using a third-party application, third-party framework that's called Identity Server 4. We'll be using this Identity Server 4. So what Identity Server 4 is, let me go to hmm, so if we go to Identity Server 4, let's Google Identity Server 4. Okay, what's happened? My Google is not working. Identity Server 4. Okay. Let's go to google.com. Identity Server 4. So here it is. So this is the website of the Identity Server 4. It has all documentation needed to add Identity Server 4. So what Identity Server 4 is an Open ID Connect, an OAuth2 framework for ASP.NET Core. So with the help of Identity Server 4, we can have the benefit of both OpenID and OAuth 2. And with this, we can use these features in our application like authentication as service, single sign-on or sign-out, access control for APIs, and many of these features. You can go through these documentations to get detailed knowledge of what it is. But now I'll show you how to use this identity server in our application. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we can add this identity server just as a service like this in this program.js file. But this file is going to be too long. That's why we will be adding a new class inside extension. We'll call this class identity server, like configure identity server, configure identity server 4. Okay, inside this class what we'll do is okay, inside this class let's make this class static, since we'll be using extension method. Yeah, let's make a method public static. Let's configure configure and rules. What I'm going to do is I'll paste copy and paste this piece of code from my another project so that we don't spend time in typing this whole word. You can just pause this video and copy the code. Okay, so what we'll need is this part. This service that add identity. This part we have already done, so we don't need this one. Add identity server. Yeah, we'll need to add this identity server package from NuGet package manager. Identity server 4. It's this one. So it's identity server 4 dot ASP.NET identity. Yeah, this one. Let's add that in our crowdfunding. Yeah, there's some error here. I think this should go away now. Did not add it yet. Okay, it's added. We also need this access token validation. Yeah, let's install this one as well. Let's check if these are added. Yeah, these two are added now. Okay, so these config files we need to add this configuration. So these configurations we can bring from our config files, iCourse policy. So these errors are gone. Now only we need to make this class to get from the config. So let's uh, make this one now. So let's make, so these are not extension method. So let's make a new folder called, let's make this as a, let's call this helper. And inside helpers we create a new class called identity server config. You know what, I'll copy this code. Save the time, let me just copy the code because my videos are getting too long when I type each of these. So oops, not that's only for this part. So what we'll need is we'll need this method called get identity resources, which has OpenID, profile, email, and resource like role. Get API resource, and in API resource we return these API secrets, scopes, and user claims. And especially this part is important if we need to enable role in Identity Server 4. We need these for to get clients. You can copy this part of code. So once this is, you can just pause my screen and then copy this part of this code, okay, one by one. So once you have done this, I think this now configure Identity Server 4. We need to bring in this namespace in here. Okay, now that we have added this, we need to bring in this into our, include this in our program.cs. Call this method in program.cs. This Identity Server 4, this one we need to call this method from program.cs file. So let's go to program.cs, and then in program.cs we're gonna add builder.yes, add db context. Where is our add db context? Yeah, just after this add identity. Yeah. Builder dot services dot add not add configure, what was the name, okay, let me just paste the method. I think I have already, yeah, copied the method. That's it. And it's also asking for configuration. We have configuration in here. Okay, the configuration is inside this builder dot configuration. Okay, so that's it. Builder dot configuration. So if we run this application, oops, there's some error. It's expecting. Okay, I think I missed one here. Now, if you run this application, so, you'll not get this API endpoint in the Swagger, but rather what we're going to do is we'll be using Postman to access this to login. Okay, so let's open Postman. Login. So now let's open our Postman. So if you go to like Swagger, you won't get these endpoints. You can find the login endpoint in Swagger because this is third-party application. So we'll need to go to Postman. In Postman, you can create a new collection. Just right click here and just click here and click a new. Just create a new collection, and inside that collection, create a new uh, collection and add a new link, and inside that endpoint, just make this post method and localhost and the port and slash connect and slash token. Okay, this port might be different, so if you want to know which port you are logged in, just open this application. Once you open this application, this is a port that you should put in. Yeah, okay. If you There's other way to find this port, and that's in these properties and launch settings, and here you can find this port as well. This port one is for HTTPS, and if you are opening in HTTP, then you'll need to use this port. Okay, so once you put that port, you'll need to go to authorization tab, and inside authorization tab, just fill in this whatever it's in here. In token, it should be available tokens. In header prefix, it should be bearer. In Okay, in grant type, it should be password credentials. In access token URL, it should be local host slash connect slash token. In client ID, this is our root client. In client secret, it's secret. Username is admin. Password is the password that we have chosen while creating this user endpoint. If you go to user endpoint, so this is the password. Okay, you can give another any different password. Okay, and scope is AP1. So these are the config settings that we have created. Identity config taken out from here. Okay, so once you have made this one, what we can do is create this button, create new access token, and it says access authentication failed. Okay, if you go to view console, could not complete or two token request. Let's see if our application is running. Our application is running, but it's saying could not complete OAuth token. So let's Google this string, figure out what's going on in here. Okay, so it says it could be some issue like SSL certification verification off. Okay, let's try using HTTP then. Okay. Oh, it could be because I'm using only HTTP here. Probably that's the issue. HTTPS. It should be HTTPS. Okay. No. Okay. Now I'm getting another issue. It says connect error icon refused 443. Probably it needs HTTPS in here as well. Localhost. Oh, I forgot to put this. You know what? Let's copy this whole part. It's this in here, and now get access token. Okay, it could not complete over to token request. It still says that. Okay, now what we do is let's use the HTTP and the HTTP port as well. Let's go to launch setting. Okay, let's copy this part. Still it's not working. Let's check if slash swagger. Okay, it's opening from HTTP as well. I don't know what's the issue here. Okay, so the reason that we are not getting this we are getting this error is because uh, what's happening is if you go to Identity Server 4, the Identity Server 4 address we are taking from configuration. Okay? Identity Server 4 and address. So we'll need to add this to our config, and that's in the app settings.json. Here we'll need to add Identity Server 4 and its address as well, because in production our its address URL would be changed. So we'll need to put this part of code, and instead of 5225 we'll need to put 5211. Okay, I'll run this application. Okay, now let's get new access token. Okay, as it run. Okay, now after that, the one more thing that we're going to add is uh, just before this add authorization here, we'll also need to add app dot use identity server. Yep, this one. Now, if you refresh this application, if you launch this application once again, then okay, now if you go to Postman, like if we go to Postman and if we try to get new access, it's taking some time. Yeah, it says authentication complete. If you press this button, you get this access token. You can press use token. If you press use token, it will come over here. You can just control A and copy this token, and then you can use this token to log in. So that's the login authentication. you'll get. But in Swagger, we don't have any mechanism to put the token. Like if there are any, if there's any authorized endpoints, we don't have any means to put the token into header. We need to put this token into header. For that, we'll need to put this in. We'll need to put some configuration in this part in use app swagger gen part. I'll just bring some code, uh, and then yep, add swagger gen. So this is a piece of code. I'm going to just paste it here, and you guys can copy this code. So just after add swagger gen, just bring this, copy this part of code options, and options add security definition bearer, and yeah. So this we are telling Swagger that we are using bearer authentication using HTTP. So when we put this piece of code, it will give us a button to authenticate. Okay. So now you can see this authorize button. So what we have to do is we will have to press this button, and the token that we have generated from here. Proceed. Now copy this token, paste that token here, and press authorize. Now once you press that button, now when you have pressed this token here, it will add this token, JWT token, into the header. So whenever you, for example, click this post campaigns, okay, let's go to our post campaign endpoint. We have put authorize here, and then now we we'll need to get the user as well, since it's in authorized mode. By default, if you don't put this endpoint, this breakpoints would not hit. But once you have put the token, now this breakpoint should be triggered. Now let's try. Let's uh, make a test campaign. It's an as test as well. Full amount, let's say 1,000. Current amount 0 started, and let's increase the end date. Let's execute. As you can see, now this endpoint is being hit, and if you try to create this, it will still give us some error because we don't have this user ID yet. So at first we'll need to generate the user ID. So it's giving us some error. You see, guys, if we log this out and try to execute this, so it will say unauthorized. See, so our authentication is working. Now what we have to do is we'll have to get this authorized token in here and get the user from that authorized token. Okay. Okay guys, now to add this user ID, to get this user ID, what we'll have to do is we'll need to bring in the user claims in here. So in this minimal API, we have a bit different approach to get the user. So what we need to do is just claims principal, so user, with the help of this claims principal, we inject this part here. And with the help of this user, I will get this user once we are authorized. So, and with the help of this user, we can get the login user. File login user is equal to. You also need to add this part, user manager application user manager. This part, that as we have done in the user endpoint. Yeah, just bring that this piece of code, add it on here, and with the help of this user manager, we need to add user manager dot get user async and user, and we need to add this in here, dot entity dot user id is equal to is login user dot id. It's in task, so we'll need to await this so we get the real data. Okay, so application user dot id. If you get this kind of warning, what you can do is you just can put this what sign, or you can put this bang sign to ignore this warning, because if you get this login users will never be null if you're authorized. If this is null, you'll never come inside this endpoint, so this can never be null. So that's why if you know that it's never going to be null, you can just put this bang sign to ignore the warning. Okay, now let's run this application. And if you go to, you can authorize this, put the let's put the token and authorize it. And if you create this, okay, yes, yes, let's put this as 1000. Let's increase the end date to 7, and let's execute. Okay, okay, let's hover over this user. So we're getting some data here. So now we got this login user as admin, and we're getting the ID as well. So we're putting this ID in here. Let's create. Okay, now we got the response to created data with the user ID as well. And if we execute, yeah, looks like it's missing type map confusion on mapping. Okay, so it's a different error. So our user is created. I mean, our campaign is created, but this is some out. This error is related to auto mapping. You can fix that error. But if you quick check the database, okay, let's just say select asterisk from cam campijn campaigns. It's crowdfunding database. Yeah, so our campaign is now created. So this is a different error. This is related to automapper. So for automapper, we'll have to add this into this request and campaign and response DTO. There's something wrong in here. So it's trying to map campaign to request. Campaign is being mapped with the request. Campaign. This means our campaign. I think here campaign to campaign request. So that mapping is not in here. Campaign to request. Campaign request to campaign is there, but campaign to campaign request is not there. But instead, what we need is campaign to campaign response detail. We'll need to put campaign uh, response detail since we are sending this as a response. Okay, whatever that comes in from client to server would be as campaign request detail, but whatever we are sending from our server to client, it will go as campaign response detail. So let's just refresh this application once again. Okay, so let's let's create a new campaign. Let's say this as test one, 20,000. Now we press continue. Okay, it's saying we are getting 201, that is success, and we are getting this response. That means our application is created. If we check our database, we should have two campaigns now. Two campaigns with the same user ID. User ID is same. Okay. So our campaign is also created. You can check this other endpoint as well, which gets all the campaigns. So we are getting two campaigns in the list with ID as well. You can check, copy this ID and check this campaign by ID, and you're getting that campaign as well. One endpoint I'm missing here is get, post, get. We're missing put and delete endpoints. We haven't created those two endpoints. So in the next um, in my next tutorial we'll be creating this put and delete endpoint for campaigns as well. In this today's tutorial, we've created this user setup. We have also added logins using Identity Server 4, and we have achieved login. We have added authorization in Swagger as well. We know how to log in by using this authorization in through the Postman as well. So we have learned a lot in this video series. So I hope to see you in the next video series. And guys, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this channel. And hopefully we meet again in the next series. Okay, thank you this much for today.